This episode is all about why you should only act within your tax specialism, the benefits this will bring you and your clients, and what you can do where clients need help outside of your specialism. We're joined by Ben Westerby in this episode, a portfolio finance director who started his own business just over a year ago. He very much lives and breathes acting only within your specialism. You're listening to episode 77 of the Tax Professionals Podcast.
Welcome to the Tax Professionals Podcast, the podcast dedicated to helping you improve your tax career. Here's your host, Jack Bonehill.
Hi everyone and welcome to this episode. If you've been a listener for some time, you may have listened to a previous episode with guest Sophia Thomas, which is all about the benefits of having your own tax specialism or niche. This was back at episode 23. This episode takes it one step further. Ben, this episode's guest, is a portfolio finance director who is very specific about the services he will and won't provide. He's a qualified accountant and could provide the whole range of accountancy services if he wanted to, from year-end accounts to bookkeeping to basic self-assessment returns. But he doesn't. Why does he do this? Does it benefit his clients? What does he do where his client or prospect wants services outside of the services he provides? Ben believes that limiting his services is actually good for his clients. Your automatic response is probably to disagree, but hear Ben out first before jumping to any conclusions. Whilst Ben's experience is related to finance more generally rather than tax specifically, most, if not all of Ben's points and reasoning relate directly to working in tax. I have a tax specialism that I'm not aware many people have. I work in employment taxes and can support and advise clients across the board in employment taxes, like many employment taxes specialists can. However, most of my experience lies purely in the recruitment sector, and more specifically, most of my experience within the sector is with recruitment agencies that do not contract with their temporary workers directly. Earlier in my career, I didn't like being so specialist as I felt it was restricting me, and so I wanted to become more broad. I didn't even want to specialise in employment taxes, and I actually started getting some experience in personal tax and VAT too because of this. However, I don't believe that anymore, and I actually now believe that it is beneficial for your career to have a rare and unique specialism. Having a rare and unique specialism doesn't mean you don't have the knowledge and skills to act more generally too if you want to. Anyway, because of my experience in this episode, I have aimed to draw the connection from what Ben is saying so you can see how it relates to working in tax. Hopefully this is clear to you and you can take some learnings from this episode, apply it at work and see for yourself the benefits of acting only within your specialism. For rough timings of each section of the episode, head on over to the details section within your podcast player of choice or head on over to thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/TTPP77, which is where the show notes for this episode are. That is the only link you need to remember for this episode. The link to the show notes, thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/TTPP77, is all other links mentioned throughout this episode are included in there, including a link to the Sophia Thomas episode I mentioned earlier. I'm a believer that we are responsible for our own tax career, progression and development, but that we should have the resources available to us to do this. I'm always keeping an eye out for gaps in these resources so that I can fill those gaps. Obviously, there are the podcast episodes that I do, which cover a wide range of topics now. But on top of this, I provide training courses purely for people who work in tax, which are focused on helping you develop vital skills to succeed in your tax career. I use real stories, real examples, exercises and questions to keep the training interesting, hopefully keep it interesting anyway, and to help you to implement what you've learned and actually improve quicker than you would otherwise. I'm currently working on my next course, the Tax Advice Masterclass, which has been designed to teach you and other tax professionals how to provide commercial, valuable and actionable tax advice that clients actually want, turning you into a desirable advisor. I'm going to be delivering it in July of this year, 2023, for those of you who are interested, and you can enrol now by heading on over to thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/masterclasses. The next Tax Research Masterclass that I'll be doing is in September of this year. You can also enrol for this now too in the link just mentioned, and get full details of both masterclasses through that link. If, like me, you're interested in knowing what you're worth in terms of salary, then get in touch with James from the Tax Recruitment Company to benchmark what you're currently on. From his interaction with many different businesses and tax professionals, he has current knowledge of salary rates based on experience and specialism. Speaking with James could help you to negotiate a pay rise or determine it's time to find a new role. Contact details for James can be found in the show notes for this episode at thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/TTPP77, or you can book a chat with him by heading on over to thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/salary chat. So, get in touch with James to benchmark your salary or to discuss potentially available roles, particularly if you work in corporation tax, as he's currently recruiting for many roles in this area. Without further ado, let's get to the episode. So just to start off with today then, Ben, if you don't mind, can you just tell us about what we need to understand about you to understand how your career has kind of gotten to this point where you're now like a portfolio finance director, which actually I'd never heard of that term before.
Yeah, so I'll start this right at the beginning. I I followed a slightly different career path than probably a lot of accountants. I did my A-levels at school, decided I didn't want to go to uni. I would have been the first year where you had to pay university fees rather than getting those grants. So giving away my age there. But decided I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be an accountant, and I knew I could do it studying evenings and weekends. So I applied for a job actually working for a small firm in Leeds that had 4 or 5 different companies, and pretty much worked in every function there. I did payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable, bookkeeping when you had a big ledger book and you actually wrote in it by hand. And then I started doing the management accounts, started studying my CIMA at this point as well. And then the finance director left, and they sort of promoted me, and I was about 20 years old at the time. So looking after 4 or 5 different companies that had just gone into administration. The owner bought it out, and I were in charge of that. And so I put my studies on hold for a bit. Kept it going for about 18 months. 18 months, business went into administration again just after I bought my first house. So I decided, right, I need to get my studying done, get that done, then started working for bigger firms. Pretty much then went to food industry, got my CIMA qualifications, did that, and then worked my way up through food manufacturers. Carried on there, then ended up working for an owner-managed business about 6 years ago. Well, I left there 6 years ago, probably about 9 years ago, started working for them. Built that business up, headed up, became finance director there, headed up HR, IT as well. And then towards the end of there, decided that where I wanted to go and where the business wanted to go was slightly different. And so I took the opportunity at that point to leave 6 years ago now, did a few contracts, fell into a part-time role, but an employed part-time role with a business. Thought part-time wasn't enough, so then ended up with 3 part-time on the books roles. Then decided I wanted to help owner managed businesses and that probably couldn't afford a full-time finance director. Wanted to do that. Somebody offered me a different full-time role, so I did that. And then just under a year ago, I started life as a portfolio finance director, working with several owner managed businesses, mainly in Leeds, but nationwide, to be honest.
Yeah. What an unusual start, though, to your career anyway, like dealing with numerous companies, going into administration at like 20 years old.
Yeah, we were dealing with HMRC, dealing with suppliers that hadn't been paid. We were a building company, so obviously all our suppliers were really friendly and wanted to talk to me really nicely as well. So it were a proper baptism of fire.
Yeah.
But I think that grounding there, it's made me, I really enjoy working with in the SME world. So working with pretty much founders, owner managers. I've worked in the large corporates, and they are very good for a grounding and giving you that broader experience and understand how all systems procedures work. But fundamentally, I think my passion's always been in the owner managed businesses where you can have a much bigger impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I see what you mean. It's just actually quite surprising in a way, because you've had this such broad experience and now you've like really niched down, haven't you, with your portfolio director work. Like, just before we get into that though, because I know I'm sure you're keen to share that too, but like, just for like mine and everyone else's understanding, like what exactly is a portfolio FD? Like, I know you do, it may be different to some others, but like generally speaking, what is it? And then what do you do as a portfolio finance director?
So interestingly, I think what I do, portfolio finance director, has many different terms. Some people might know it as a fractional director, which always makes me have a bit of a chuckle. If it's fractional, which part of the person do you get? You get the arm, the leg, the head. Some people call it a part-time finance director, and also portfolio. I use portfolio because for me, you are working with a portfolio of clients, you're working with a range of clients. The reason I think it's slightly different to a part-time finance director, part-time might just be a business owner needs somebody 3 days a week and somebody just wants to work 3 days a week. I think the benefits, and the reason I call it portfolio, is you're working with a range of clients, so you can bring the learnings from each client to other clients. And what I find is I do take learnings from some clients into others because there's similarities, so it benefits them as well, to be honest.
Yeah, and to be honest, I see that as well to my tax role, because we do probably 90% of the work in our team in the recruitment sector. And once you've seen like an issue or something that can help one recruitment business, it's usually an issue in all. And the thing you've helped them with can also probably help all of them too. Now, I know that's general, but I'm guessing that's what you're seeing too, right? Because you tend to work in a few sectors in specific, don't you?
Yeah, interestingly, when I started out and people are going, so what's your niche? And it's like, well, I ain't really got, when I work with anybody, I won't work with financial services or heavy regulated industries, because from my point of view, you've probably got to have some specialist knowledge in there, and I can't add as much value as others. How it's ended up, though, is throughout my career, I've worked in fast-moving consumer goods, mostly manufacturing. So I've tended to attract those type of clients. I work with e-commerce businesses, fast-moving consumer goods, work with some SaaS businesses, so some service businesses, subscription businesses. So that's pretty much where I've ended up. And actually, I've ended up where I'm working with owner-managed businesses, predominantly with founders.
Okay.
So that's probably where I've niched. And what I'm doing currently is the service I offer is a portfolio finance director service, though potentially broadening that out because I'm doing my coaching and mentoring qualifications as well. But throughout that, people said to me, you need to niche. And as the more I've got into business, 11 months in now, if I'm trying to offer everything to everybody, what you find is you think everybody's going to come to you, but nobody comes to you.
Yeah.
Whereas I go out and go, I'm an FD and I'll portfolio FD and I specialize in e-commerce, somebody typing in will be attracted to you if it's e-commerce. So actually by niching, you're probably attracting more customers.
Yeah, but I think so as well, to be fair, because I could have done like a podcast for finance people, but then there's so much stuff out there for finance people generally that it would be too generic probably, not enough people would get eyes on it, and I probably couldn't be specific enough either. And I think niching does like both sides of it in a way. It helps people find you, but then once you're helping them as well, it helps you to help them better than what you would if you didn't niche.
Yeah, definitely. And what you referred to earlier on, I think if you're working in a particular industry or with particular types of business, you get used to what they do. And let's be honest, there's only so many variations of things. And once you've seen it, when you've seen it for the first time, you've investigated, you've got that experience then, and it's going to happen with other people. And I see that. So, for example, a couple of my clients import with containers and pay in US dollars. Well, actually, what affects one then affects two or three of them. So I can, and I have the conversations with the clients, I'm quite candid about it, but saying, oh, this is what we're seeing in one place, this is what we're seeing in other, just as a bit of a sense check to go, actually, is it just us or is that seen across the board? And I can give them that knowledge firsthand to say, yeah, I am seeing this across my other clients. Don't go into specifics and break any confidentiality, but you can be general enough to go, actually, yeah, we're seeing these issues as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I see what you mean. So in terms of like day to day, then like how do you really like help businesses? Because there's a lot of general accountancy stuff that you can do, right? But I think I'm right in saying that you've really like limited like the services that you provide. So you don't do like general bookkeeping or general accounting stuff. Isn't it more like high level analysis, strategic type things?
Yeah, so what I say, the cut off sometimes is preparing the month end account. So my preference is some businesses will have a bookkeeper and they'll take it trial balance and they just need a bit of help getting the management accounts pack sorted. Some businesses will get the management accounts pack. Where I tend to find I can add most value is being like that right-hand person to the owner of the business. And what I tend to find is owners come to me and go, I've got a bit of a finance issue. I don't really understand my numbers, or I need a bit of a forecast. But then when you start talking to them, they're going, I just really need somebody that's sort of helped a business grow this way. And as I do that, I help them predominantly with forward-looking with forecasts, implementing board meetings, that help them put processes in place that they can then implement across the rest of the business. And it's speaking to people, getting those systems and processes in. From a finance point of view, because I've got the experience, and when they're going, right, I want to borrow money or I want to do fundraise, we put the cash flow forecasting in place for them. We'll put in a financial forecast if they need that can look 3-5 years out. And I've got a model that I use that I can amend for different businesses. But when people come to me and go, oh, can you do my stat accounts? It's like, no, I don't do that. Can you do my tax return? It's like, no, I don't do that, but I can introduce you to somebody that does, because I know where I can add the most value. And you mentioned earlier on about bookkeeping. I could offer bookkeeping, but either I'd be the most expensive bookkeeper somebody could hire, or I'd be earning a lot less than what I could do in what I really enjoy and where I can add the value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like they're the main reasons then that's why you've kind of done that, so that you can always work in the space where you can add the most value and don't dilute that. I mean, have you ever been tempted to like verge out into some of those other things too?
It's interesting because a year into the bit, when I set up a year ago or just under a year, it were like, this is what I want to do. And then 3 months in of working for yourself, your own business, you're like, right, I'm going to do things different. And I'm at a point now where it's like, right, how do you scale it? And one of the things I'm doing, do I offer a wider range of services? I don't think I'm quite there yet, but I'd only do it if I could have the specialists in those areas that I could get to work for me. So even though I potentially could offer a wider range of services, it would be because I had access to those specialists to do that. So there's no point me charging a client an FD's rate to do bookkeeping. I'd get a bookkeeper that's a specialist in bookkeeping, because in all honesty, they'd probably do a better job at bookkeeping than me. So that's the only temptation I get, is where it's like, do you offer a wider range of services? And I'd only do that if I had the infrastructure around me to do it.
Yeah. And it sounds like, anyway, if you did decide to do that, you wouldn't be the one doing the day-to-day work there. Someone else with, I suppose, more expertise in that area would be doing it.
Yeah, exactly that. So from a bookkeeper, there are some clients where they go, oh, I've got a bit of an issue, can you jump in? And you jump in and do it. But for example, in one of my clients, I've helped them recruit finance staff into the team to take some work off me that I were helping them short term, which has then freed my time up to help with the more strategic issues that the business has got. So this is where I can add more value. And then what it means is they can have a person within the business for a longer period of time for a similar cost.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think it's quite similar anyway when it comes to tax in a way, even within like specialisms, because like I could, if I wanted to, find the answer to a VAT question or corporation tax question, but it would take me time to do it. And it's easier to miss something since I'm not like a specialist in that area. Whereas within like employment taxes, if someone comes to me and says, I don't know, is this entertaining? Is it taxable on our staff? Yes or no? I can answer the yes or no easily. Plus then also go, but if you tweak it a bit, you can actually make it tax efficient. And these are all your different options. And I can give them like 4 or 5 different options. Whereas in corporation tax, for example, I could find the answer to that question, but I wouldn't necessarily be able to give them all the options. And you can just see, I suppose, a difference in that value. Then I suppose the example in employment tax is where I can give all the options. To me, that's advice. Whereas just saying yes or no, it's taxable. That isn't really advice, right? It's not that valuable. Most people can probably find that answer themselves anyway. Yeah,
and I agree with that. And that's one of the reasons that I don't give tax advice. And I'd always use a specialist in an area, especially from a tax point of view. There's quite a lot of things that are changing. And for me, that's one of the areas where people can add real value. So like I say, I wouldn't go to an employment tax specialist to talk about VAT. I've worked with a VAT specialist before in a retail company that I worked in. And the value, the insight that they know about what percentage potato needs to be in these crisps to whether they're battable or not and whether you're charging right rate and stuff. It's like, be honest, I've got no interest in that. But if you're doing that day to day, it's probably quite simple. and I always say to business owners, and it is a bit of a challenge to get them over it, is going, if you pay for a specialist, you will get better value. It's that old saying, if you think it's expensive to hire an expert, wait until you hire an amateur. And that's where I think you need to be that specialist. And what I've done across that is I'm building my network. I've built it up over the years to have that good network, to know who to speak to. And that's another piece of value I can add to my clients, because the person who knows all the answers hasn't been born yet. So it's like, and people say to me, oh, do you know this? It's like, I don't, but I can get hold of somebody who'll be able to tell you the answer to that. And I think, especially now, that's more important. Like I say, Google's fantastic. You can go on Google and probably find an answer to most questions and most tax things, but what you're not getting is that value add. You will get a simple question that goes, this is the rules, where you go, yeah, but if you do it slightly different, this is what happens. Now, whether that changes with developments in AI and everything, but as we stand currently, it doesn't give you that.
Yeah, I mean, as of right now, I mean, and you don't know what's possible in the future, but I can't see AI ever going from just a black and white answer to currently like strategic tax planning and thinking of 100 different options, because it's so flexible. You need there's different interpretations you can take of things. Like there's so many variables. I think probably a long way off, if that even is possible, getting AI to do the tax planning for us. I'd like to hope, at least, anyway.
Definitely. The other bit that I'd add to that is when you're speaking with a client, it's the questions that you ask, and it's the experience that you've got and the specialism that you've got. You ask those questions that they probably haven't even thought that they need to answer. So they go into Google and go, oh, what do I get with this? But you'd be asking those questions. What about this? How many times are you doing it? What have you done else? What else do you do? Would you consider doing this instead of that? What's this circumstance? What's that? And actually, because of that experience and that specialist, you can ask those questions. So very broadly for me, I said I work with e-commerce businesses. I went into one business and I had a couple of hour meeting with them as an introductory meeting. And I'm like, oh, use Shopify. Yeah. Do you use this reporting tool? Do you use this? They're like, no. So next time I went to see them, they started using it and they went, these reports that you give us are fantastic. Well, for me, I use that in every client that I work in that uses that's e-commerce, that uses Shopify. So I can quickly add a lot of value to a business in that niche area in a 30-minute conversation. And in fairness, that were pre-committing to working with me. So I'm giving them that advice for free. They valued that. They could see the value in that advice I've given them for free. So they're going, well, actually, if I'm going to pay somebody to do something, I'll use Ben because he's given me that and he's helped me and he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. One of the hard things, though, isn't it, with like winning new clients or whatever you want to call it, is one, how do you get them to start realizing that there's more questions to ask? And then two, how do you get them to come to you or know that they need to come to you? Like, have you got any thoughts around that?
I think getting them to come to me, I think this whole portfolio part-time finance director. I do think there's a massive education piece that needs doing, not only within finance, because I think there's a lot of people within the finance industry that don't know these people exist, but within the wider business, I think there's a lot of business owners that need this support that don't realise it's out there. We're going, I need this help. And it's like, but I don't know where to go. So I'm currently I go to networking events, in-person networking events. Now we can do that again. I'm trying on LinkedIn. I post pretty much 5 days a week, post Monday to Friday, and try and post on that. Go to events. I'm a speaker at, I'm a SEMA member, so SEMA's got members in practice. We're doing things with that community as well. But it's speaking to people and educating and posting on social media. I think LinkedIn's so powerful, and people talk about other platforms. But I think it depends in terms of where your client base is at. Where do your clients hang out? I've worked with a marketing company to help me understand what my ideal client is and where my ideal client will look, what what social media they use, what events they'll go to, because actually you can post things everywhere, but if people don't know you exist, they're not going to use you. And then when you start speaking to them, one of the first things that I normally get hit with is, well, I've got so far without needing an FD, what do I do? Shortly followed by, or firstly gone, but you're expensive. And it's like, well, yeah, I am, but see it as an investment, not a cost.
Yeah.
And this is where sometimes I have issues trying to bring other professional advisors in. Business owners, entrepreneurs, they've probably worked for the startup and probably sacrificed what they're earning. Then they see somebody coming in wanting to, in their eyes, earn a lot of money. They're going, well, that's expensive. And my big challenge is they have got to take a bit of a leap of faith. And the feedback I get after 6 weeks, sometimes shorter, sometimes slightly longer, is I understand now. I understand why it is. Actually, you've opened my eyes and I can see the value of it. So, and I think that somewhere you've almost now got to demonstrate some of that when you're first speaking to a client, and giving some free advice, giving some insight is such a good way to prove that. I know there's some thought process about don't give things away for free. But for me, if you're giving advice, you've got to give things away for free. I'm not telling you to go and work a day at a client's and don't get paid. I'm not telling you to have meeting after meeting after meeting with clients. But I think an introductory meeting and giving some free advice and demonstrating how you can add value is just so important. Even posting on social media. I post, like I say, I post on LinkedIn, and you give out little tips and advice on there. It's brilliant, because some people will take the free tips because they either can't afford to pay it or they don't need to pay it. That's all they need. But guess what? When somebody asks them, all right, do you know somebody that does that? They're going to remember what you did for them.
Yeah. The thing is, with giving stuff away, I think it's okay if you're doing it on your terms and not theirs, if that makes sense. And I think where LinkedIn can come in is because you can give away like one, I suppose, to you, a small tip that can potentially help lots of people. And so it's not like a big time investment, but still helpful. But a few things I was thinking then anyway, as well, like even in tax, right, like people don't realize the value that they will get from tax advice. So I had a client fairly recently, I think it was around January time this year, the FD there, who's notorious for just sending over something in a way that makes it sound like it's a simple question. The question was, can like a member of staff pay their full salary into the pension? And they just wanted like a yes or no response. But they came to us and asked that question. And this is where you can get the value add when you go to the right people. Is I said, yes, and these are the ways that you can do it. And if you do it this way, it's going to save you like 10K of national insurance. And then if they didn't come to us and ask that, they would have got someone else that would have just said, yes, you can do it. And they would have done it in a way that didn't have those savings. They ended up paying us like $2,500 for the advice and implementing it so it worked, etc. But they still saved 7.5K there. And then actually this person ended up having a huge bonus anyway that wanted to put their pension into the salary. It was like a 60K bonus, something ridiculous. I don't even know if people get bonuses that big, but anyway, they did. And then just on that alone, it was another 6K of savings. And because we'd already done the work beforehand, then our advice, the cost of our advice was much less. But it's really hard, isn't it, getting to that point in the first place to make them realize that if they ask that question, then it can do all these things. And I know obviously with like a lot of people see people who do the same thing as them as like competition. And I think there's actually like part where we can like work together, which is the awareness building. So like employment taxes people, for example, can build that awareness to go, this is the value that you can get from employment tax people. Because the more people who are aware, the more people that might buy from you. They might buy from your competitor as well, but the more you can get into that initial bucket, the more you've got to go at in a way. So I'm not a big fan of like the whole competition thing, at least in the early stages, like awareness. I think we should work together. When it comes to your strategy afterwards to turn them into clients, I think that's where you can be a bit more funny about the competition, etc. Does that kind of make sense? This is like a thought in my head at the moment that I've never really said out loud.
I agree with that. And interesting, I've been speaking to somebody else today who does portfolio finance director work, to do a few other things as well. And we were saying, actually, if we grow the market, there's a lack of awareness. So there's a lot less people using our services than we believe we need. If you grow that market, it's like baking bigger cake and there's 10 slices. Everybody gets a bigger piece of cake. So I think we all need to work together to do it. Yes, we are in competition with each other, but sometimes there might be clients that I meet that aren't quite right for me from a personality culture point of view. Because you can't hit it off with everybody. There might be people that I know that do a similar thing. I think you've got to work together. Plus, there's that support network around you to do it. What you were saying earlier on about the saving, I think that's a great case study that can go on websites, social media. So this is what I've done with a client. The other thing that you do with clients, especially with tax quite a lot of things, they will see the cost. And if you're making a saving in year 1 against the cost, well, year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you've not got that cost, but you're making the saving. So saving potentially massive, and you could be underselling the saving that you've made to a client. And this is where I think there is more awareness needed. And sometimes with clients, actually, when you can demonstrate that and say, this is what I've done from somebody else, I think that's when business owners start to get interested. Let's be honest. If you go, they see tax advice as a cost. But if they've saved money for it, they'll go, actually, it's an investment, because in a lot of cases, not only are you going to make sure they're compliant, because it's a minefield in terms of doing things wrong, and a lot of the time not intentionally. So you're doing things wrong. So actually you're stopping that, and you're getting a payback for it. So even if it cost a very little amount, or it broke even, you just, well, actually, I'm compliant. I've ticked all these boxes. I've done what I need to do. And I think for business owners I work with, it allows them to probably sleep at night a bit better. And that's one of the things that I try and do with people, is try and save them time and try and make them have less stress. I think that is much more important than going, I just want to make more money.
It is another valuable thing, isn't it? I mean, one of the things I end up helping a lot of FDs a lot with is portraying to like the managing director or someone similar that they need to do something, because they're like going, I know there's this risk here, but I just can't get them to sign off and do anything about it. And I'm like, well, if you say these things to them and let them know like the extent of the risk, maybe with a few calculations and examples, you might get their interest a bit more. So sometimes it's not particularly tax advice, it's helping them to get through like a tax outcome in a way, which you wouldn't think before being an advisor anyway, that you'd have to do those things. I know me early days thought it was very much like, they're going to ask me tax questions, I'm going to give them the answer, I'm going to be like the greatest tax person ever by just doing that. But there's so much more to it than that, isn't there?
There's an element as well that sometimes you've got to do, and you see it quite often, is if people, if there's fines or there's people being done for tax evasion, tax discrepancies, you've got to highlight them things, and sometimes it's a scare factor, and I don't enjoy doing it or highlighting those things, but sometimes it's the only way.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like a last resort that I use. I think it sounds like you do the same, to be fair. I always want to sell the benefits first rather than the bad things that you can avoid in a way.
Find that to benchmark your salary, find out what you're worth, or to discuss available tax roles, get in contact with James at the Tax Recruitment Company. His contact details can be found in the show notes for this episode at thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/TTPP77, or you can book a call with him by heading on over to thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/salary chat.
It is, and I used to work for a few PLCs, so I have to be careful what I say, but we used to have to submit capital authorisation forms. And I worked with one factory manager where if we put it down as health and safety and tell them that if they don't spend this money, somebody could potentially seriously injure themselves at site, they'll sign it off. And they signed it off because of that fear. Now, he did have some spurious link to health with most things he got. But back to business owners, how do you get them engaged? You get them engaged from either it's going to save me money, or if I don't do it, it's going to cost me a lot of money. And I think it's been able to demonstrate that. If BBC News or Sky News do something for you, it pretty much does your job. Because people are scared, it's in the news, and then people go, right, this is what I need to do. If it's not in there, but the mate down the pub has told them that, yeah, you don't have to pay tax on that, so it don't matter. So then you're trying to say to him, but yeah, you do. And they're just like, no, it's fine. My mate don't do it. It's like, all right, what's his qualification then?
You know what, actually, whenever people say that, like, oh, I know another, because this is the one we get a lot, it's like, oh, my competitors are doing this. I'm like, but do you know about all these circumstances surrounding it? And do you know what they're doing there? Oh, well, no. I'm like, well, that could be the difference between why they're able to do that and why you're not able to do it. Like, the small details matter on these things in tax and finance, I'm guessing as well, right? But yeah, when you get that one person or one business that's doing something in a certain way and all the competitors want to do it the same, but don't appreciate those small differences, it can be hard to help them see the light that they're going to end up putting a huge risk in their business if they do something in a certain way.
Yeah, definitely. So I generally work with business owners that have been trading for a couple of years. They get to that point because most of the time when they start off, they probably don't need me and probably can't afford me. But one of the questions I get asked from people I see when they work, oh, you're an accountant. Oh, yeah. So I'm doing this, but I don't pay tax in my first year, do I? Like, all right, why not? Well, no, because I don't. That's the rules, isn't it? And it's these myths that people invent about what's going on. But everybody seems to grow legs. But then you go, oh, you can speak to somebody about it, like, oh, I don't want to pay for it. It's like, yeah, but you might get the best advice you've ever got by paying for it. So I always refer people on if people go to me, oh, you're an accountant, you do a self-assessment. It's like, no, I won't. But I'll put you point of somebody who'll probably do it better than me and be a lot cheaper.
The one we get a lot actually that I always find funny is to do with like staff gifts, and they go, oh, it's below £50. There's no taxes there. I'm like, well, that's half of the raw, like what's the other half of it? Why are you giving them that gift? Is it because it's for something they've done as part of their job, or is it because they're getting married or something? Because that'll make a difference. To have you considered VAT in that cost? What about delivery fees? And all of a sudden they're like, I didn't appreciate all these things, and it's the difference sometimes between it being taxable and not taxable. So they need to appreciate the small things. You did just touch upon this a little bit anyway about like, I suppose what you do where a client or a prospect asks you to do something, but it's not something that forms part of your like overall services. But like, how would you deal with that to not put potentially clients off, not to annoy them, not to stop prospects going forward? Because I imagine sometimes they will just expect to do it, and then when you turn around and go, oh, I can't do that, or I'm not willing to do that, they might be a bit annoyed sometimes. So like, how would you deal with that to stop it kind of happening?
I think for me, I'm fairly upfront in whenever I speak to people, and I've done presentations to people as well. I've got a slide that I go, here's a list of everything I don't do. And I'm quite clever. I post it on social media and go, this is everything I won't do. So I won't do your tax. I won't do your stat accounts. I won't do this. But then what I say is, this is what I do. And actually, if you want that doing, I'll introduce you to somebody who can do that, who will do that better. And actually, you don't want to be paying me to do that when year-end accounts, for example. Could I do a year-end stat account? I could do. But am I going to do them as well as somebody that does them all the time for the day job? I'm not going to be able to do it. Where my value lies is understanding the business and adding the value in the board meetings and interpreting the financials and understanding the costings and doing that. So I very much tell them, look, I can add more value in this area. And actually, that's what you're paying. That's where you're going to get better value for money.
Yeah.
But I think also then by saying, these are the things that I won't do, and going, but I can introduce you to somebody. Well, straight away, one of the things is, well, actually, if you do a good job there, they're going, oh, well, yeah, refer me into somebody. And what I do with some clients is offer to say, look, I try and get 2 or 3 people in each area that I can refer clients into, because some clients it's going, well, if you just send one person in, it's like, oh, you're just sending your mate in and they could be good or not. And personality, I touched on it earlier on, personality-wise and cultural fit, I think is really important. Some of the best accountants out there, but they might not get along with business owners. You're just not going to be able to get along with everybody. So I think it's important to have a range of people you can introduce, and trusted people as well. But I think you tackle it early on. And my view is, if the clients that I'm going for want all that and don't want one person to do it all, then they're not the right clients for me. And it was quite hard to get my head around at first, but I've got my head around it now to go, actually, you can't please everybody. You're not going to win every piece of work. and some people just won't like what you do. Just like get over it.
And I think it's all about like, I suppose you fitting them fitting you. I almost feel like it's a fairly new concept to like not take on everyone as a client. You know, I've had plenty of people who I've done work for, and I'm like, the last thing I want to do is do more work for you. And so I would never get in contact with them again to do another piece of work because I didn't enjoy working with them. Because I do feel like when you work with businesses that are not a right fit for you, or you don't like working with them, they just suck all your energy away. And then it really takes away that focus for like the clients that you actually want to work for and where you can do a good job for them. The things that tend to annoy me most, to be fair, are clients that just nitpick every single fee or never seem to be happy with the bill, which doesn't happen that much, to be fair. But when it does, I just think, can't be bothered with this. And two, it's where they like don't seem to help at all with the service that you're offering. So let's say I'm helping someone with a HMRC inquiry and we need to get information from them to support their position and defend them. And then when you get rubbish back from them, you're like, well, what's the point in trying to defend you if you don't even want to defend yourself? Like, this is not difficult to do. So I know the type of clients that I don't like working with as well, to defend. I try to avoid working with them where possible.
Yeah, and I think there's a bit of that comes with experience. And for people setting up on their own, I think at the beginning it's quite daunting. You've got to be very brave to stick with your pricing, and realistically, everybody prices too cheap to start with, and you take on too many clients that you wouldn't normally take on. I think as you then grow in confidence, you can get your prices up, and you can be more choosy with clients. Some you might go, right, let's do a scoping session first. And at the end of that scoping session, you can decide whether you want to work with them, they want to work with you. Sometimes you commit to a client, you're like, I'm just going to have to commit to it and finish, and then I don't want to work with them again. But it is quite brave, especially early on, if you're quiet, to say no to work. It ultimately is. But what I've found is the clients that are after discounts all the time, and they're the same ones that don't get back to you, they're the same ones that cause you the issues, they're the same ones that probably don't appreciate if you had a chat with them to go, actually, this has been a lot more work, we need to have a chat around fees. So I think there's signs, but you've almost, dare I say it, got to go through some of that pain to actually realise it. Because even if somebody tells you it, you're like, yeah, but these are different. And we've all been there. We've all done it. But you've got to go through that. And for me, it's you're always going to go through that, but try and have the impact as minimal as you can do, as it can be, because it does get to you. And when you've got that client, you know you don't want to do that, but you've still got to do a good service for them. But I do think you need to be strong and create them boundaries. I think having a contract and expectations up front in terms of what you do, what you don't, being quite clear to clients to say, I need this information by this date, and then you'll get it by then. Because your troublesome clients are probably those that send information in late, want it early, don't pay your invoice on time. And that's another one. If you've got a client you're slightly worried about, just tell them you're not paying up front. The amount of businesses that want things paid up front now, I think, is increasing, and I think people are more happy to pay it. If somebody asked me for payment up front, I wouldn't really think twice about it, to be fair, in most instances. And even businesses where I've done work from, they send me the invoice, I pay them pretty much straight away. So I think you've got to create them boundaries and be quite rigid with them. And actually, if a client's going to say no, if somebody's going to pay you up front and they're going to pay you at a decent rate to do something, even if they're hard work, they've paid you up front, so they need to send you everything. You just need to be very clear about deliverables. And if they ask for extra, well, it's going to be extra. If they're late with sending the stuff in, you can't promise them that you're going to be able to hit the deadlines. You'll do your best to do it. But like I say, just starting out, it's difficult to do that.
You need the confidence, don't you? And the more work you have, the more confidence you have to turn things down. I kind of get that, but at risk of ranting too much about this anyway, I think we should move on a little bit. This is a topic you can see I can talk about probably for ages, thinking about all the clients that have annoyed me in the past. But in terms of referring in then anyway, so how do you do that exactly, I suppose, because it sounds like you've got almost like a list of people that you will refer in for specific things. But like, how did you even get there in the first place? And do you ever like refer people expecting referrals back, use referral fees? Like, in terms of the whole referral piece, how have you dealt with that?
So it's people that I've known through my network, and some people I will have been introduced to very recently, and some people I will have known for years. But it's going to events and speaking to other people, and you hear when you go to events or you speak to people, oh, you need to speak to this person, they're good, you need to speak to this person. And it might be the case you've worked with a business and there's somebody in that business, or take insurance, for example. You go, oh, we've got an insurance provider here that's really good. So you speak to them and you go, actually, they are really good. And I can see they've demonstrated that. So then that's another one that you add to your list. Similarly, you might go in somewhere and somebody might be doing a bad job. So you go, right, don't use them. So that's a bit of a flag. But it's working with people. I think having them conversations as well. If you connect with somebody on LinkedIn or you meet somebody at an event, if you haven't had that chance to speak to them, follow up, have a 15-minute, 30-minute conversation. It doesn't need to be any more than 30 minutes. Have a conversation with them and understand, and you go, right, do I agree with what they're saying? Do we get along? I think you don't necessarily always have to get along, but are they good at what they do? And you build that up over time, and you work with people and you listen to what other people say about it. But I do try and have chats with people and keep in touch with them to find out, one, what they're up to, what's been going on, what availability they've got. So if somebody phones me, I've got a number of people that I can phone in different sectors, whether that be they need an auditor, and because of the range of people I know depend on what type of business is it, what size is it, who do you need to speak to, if it's tax advice. But I'm always increasing my network of people that can do things, because you might see somebody that does something slightly different. And I think it's, for me, your network is more important than ever, and it needs building up over time. Go to in-person events, go to online events, connect with people on LinkedIn, but connect with them and message them. Don't just connect and have a connection sat there. Speak to people. And that's how, for me, I've built it up, is working with people and through referrals. But just in terms of referral fees, it's not something I do. For me, I refer good people into businesses because it reflects well on me. And I'm not interested in those referral fees. I've been offered them in the past, and it's like, actually, for having to declare a referral fee, I've got no vested interest. All I want to do is provide a better service to my client and actually make my life easy when I'm working there. So it's not I know some other people do it, and each to their own. As some people have said to me, if you don't want a referral fee, we'll donate it to charity, which again is fine. But for me, it's just, I like working with good people.
Yeah, which is the key thing, I suppose, isn't it? Because the last thing you want to do is refer in someone who does an awful job, and then your client that you've known for 5 years is annoyed with you, and it damages that relationship.
Yeah, it does. And similarly, I wouldn't refer somebody in going, I'll only refer you if you refer me in somewhere else.
Yeah.
I've got friends that I know that you build them up as friends as you go along, where I've said, I've referred business in, and sometimes when you speak to me, like, I've given you this many pieces of work and I'm still waiting for you to return the favour. But it's more a bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing.
Yeah.
But I'd have no hesitation in referring somebody in that were good, whether they'd refer me in or not. And in some cases, it's not relevant for them to refer you in, to be honest.
How do you kind of, well, maybe there isn't an exact answer to this, but do you try and like increase the chances of people referring stuff back to you if you're referring stuff to them as well? Or is there literally like no expectation on your part at all for that?
No, I think you just got to demonstrate to them why you're good at what you do. And I'll be in networks with people, and most people I know will know the portfolio FDs. So the chances are they will be referring people in. and sometimes about actually you're not right, you're not there. I think if I were referring somebody in and you've got that relationship, there's probably discussion to have if they kept referring somebody else who did something to you, similar to you, and never referring you in. But all I say to people in my network is I will put you in front of a client where I can, and it might be alongside one or two other people as well. But I can't get you in there. It'll be as an introduction, because ultimately for me, it's the client's choice. All I'll say to them is I can refer you into people that I think are good and can do a job. So that's where I'll get to. And if people say, "Oh, I can do you an intro," that's fantastic for me. Even if it's not necessarily an intro to a job, it might be somebody that doesn't have a finance director, for example. But you're building your network, and then you've got that intro. You can then develop that on, and I think that's really important. To be fair,
I think maybe just to summarise it on that section in a way, like to increase the chances of you being referred in, you just need to make it clear what it is that you do and help people see that you do a good job in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. If you don't mind then, Ben, if people want to learn more about you, where are the best places for them to go?
So find me on LinkedIn, Ben Westerby, company Westerby Consultancy. Got a LinkedIn page for that. So they're both on LinkedIn. I do have an Instagram account for my business. Don't get much use.
I mean, not for yourself, is on weekends.
Yeah, I've got a TikTok account and a YouTube channel, but they're not getting any use at all yet. And I've got my website, which is you can find through LinkedIn, or it's westerbyconsultancy.co.uk. So yeah, that's where you can find me, mostly on LinkedIn. Like I say, Monday to Friday I post, and if anybody likes a good joke, every Friday I say a good joke, it's probably quite poor to be honest, but there's chuckles and groans and comments every week.
Hope you enjoyed having a non-tax guest on for a change with this one, and have taken away something valuable. Show notes for this episode can be accessed at thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/TTPP77. All links mentioned in this episode are within the show notes, including links to my masterclasses for people who work in tax. The next Tax Research Masterclass, which is designed to help you to develop the practical skills to undertake quality research at work and document your findings, is in September of this year, and the first Tax Advice Masterclass, designed to teach you how to provide high-quality tax advice that clients can use to make informed decisions easily and help you to become their trusted advisor of choice, is in July. If you enjoyed this episode, head on over to thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/subscribe to sign up for email notifications to make sure you don't miss out on any future episodes. Episodes are bi-weekly and are released on Mondays. But that's it for this episode. Hope you've taken away some useful points to help you to progress, develop and improve your tax career. Until next time.